But with fiat, the one thing that really clicked for me and that made me say, okay, enough's enough here, I don't want to be part of this anymore, is that with fiat, there's an unlimited amount of it, and we have no idea how much fiat there is out there. And so I just want you to really pay attention to what I'm about to say here, because once this clicks with people, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because our whole life is valued in dollars, and the US dollar is the world reserve currency. And so everything's kind of based off of that. But when you understand that we have no idea how much dollars are out there right now, and we have no idea how many dollars will be printed in the future, that makes things impossible to navigate. Impossible. Because when you're valuing anything against the dollar, you need a denominator there. You need something that's fixed. And our best estimate of how many US dollars are out there in the world would be nowhere near the actual. Just think about it. They have an idea of how many are in the banks, digital dollars. But in terms of actual US dollars, how many countries there are in the world, how many countries use the US dollar, how many dollars have been lost or burned or tucked under the mattresses? Like, we have absolutely no idea how many dollars are out there. And that's what our entire world runs on. A currency where we have no idea how many dollars there are today and how many dollars there will be tomorrow. And when you live in that world, when you live in that financial system, it's impossible to do anything. So with Bitcoin, the flip side of that, so think about this. Think about a house. We measure that in US dollars. Okay. So with that we're comparing it to a currency or an asset where we have no idea how many dollars are out there. None. So if they printed 1 trillion, or if they added another 0 or 3 zeros to their balance sheet tomorrow, would that have any immediate impact on your house price? I don't know. What if they discovered a whole thing of dollars in some country or whatever it is? Like, the point here is that we have no idea how many dollars there are in the world. And that's what our entire world is based on. So when you're measuring things in that currency, you can't really compare the two because we have no idea how many dollars there are out there. None. We can't even make a good bet of how many dollars are out there. So when you're trying to compare things to that, it's impossible. And so that's why I think that Bitcoin hasn't gone up in price. Even though we've seen Bitcoin go from $2 10 years ago to 70,000 today, Bitcoin hasn't gone up in price. Everything has fallen compared to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the first and the only asset in human history where we have a fixed amount of supply. That the denominator in every value equation is set, it's fixed. We know how many there are today, we know how many there are going to be tomorrow, and we know how many there are going to be in 10 years from now. We can peg everything to that because we know how many there are. And so Bitcoin's not going up in price. Everything is falling in comparison to Bitcoin. And so we think about this house, and I know we compare a lot of different assets, but let's use this house as an example. 2 years ago when I bought it, let's say it was worth $300,000. How many Bitcoin was that? It was probably 100 Bitcoin. I think it was about $30,000 for a Bitcoin. So let's say 100 Bitcoin. Today, this house would be worth about, no, it's 100. That seems pretty high. Maybe 10 Bitcoin? 10 Bitcoin. Today, this house would be worth 3 Bitcoin or 4 Bitcoin. So when you change your lens of how you value things in the world, instead of valuing everything in the US dollar, which is it's an illusion, because we have no idea how many US dollars are out there. You cannot measure anything against the dollar. Everything has been just a complete illusion that they've told us. And think about how many inner workings there are with that. Every single country on earth is pegged. Essentially, it's the world reserve currency. So all these different currencies are based off of the US dollar. And so how would you go about tracking all those? Let's say that somebody the government in Kenya decided that they want to issue, $1 trillion worth of new money. How does that impact every other person on earth? It's just a complete mess. And everything. So with that, what would happen is the Kenyan dollar, whatever it's called, it would go down in value compared to the US. That makes sense. They print more money, their dollar becomes worth less. But what happens when the US dollar is printed too much? Kenya's not going to call up Biden and say, hey, we're actually going to devalue your dollar a little bit here because you printed some money. So our Kenyan dollar is actually going to be more valuable today because you printed a bunch of money. It's not how it works. The US can do whatever they want. They extort all these different countries. There's so many inner workings there with country to country exchange rates, and keeping track of all that is a complete nightmare. And that's the world we live in right now, or we did. So imagine if you had one currency and everything is valued in that currency. Nothing ever changed. Doesn't matter what country you're in. That's the world currency. And so when I started to think like that, that's where my whole life changed, my whole perspective in terms of where I want to be spending my time, what I choose to do, what I choose to think, and what I choose to, every day in my life. What do I want to do? I don't want to live in that world anymore. I want to live in a world of Bitcoin. So your whole lens there. And I think that once that clicks with people, that the price of Bitcoin has not gone up. The price of Bitcoin has not gone up. It's just that everything is falling in comparison to Bitcoin because it's the only fixed asset that we have. And so you can actually value anything to Bitcoin because it's a fixed, that denominator there is fixed. And we've never had that before. And as more and more people realize that, as more and more companies realize that, and as more and more countries realize that, everything is just going to continue to fall faster. And what we're going to see from our end of that is we're going to see the price of Bitcoin going up. But that's not what's happening there. It's just that every single thing in the world is falling in comparison to Bitcoin. And I had to hear that about 5 or 10 times myself before that really clicked in my head. So, and this is one thing that really stuck with me here is this exact quote actually, is that Bitcoin has no top because the fiat dollar has no bottom. Think about that. That just basically sums up everything that I just said, but you have to understand it from that lens. And then when you understand that, everything in your life changes because you start doing things differently, you start thinking differently, and you start putting your energy and your time into different things. So with that, I didn't think that was going to take that long. We're 50 minutes into it here, but that was kind of the main point that I wanted to get across here to people. And I'm sure there's people who watch the show who have kind of put that in together in their head already. But if there's not, I want you to start measuring everything in your life in terms of Bitcoin, not fiat. So when you do that, when you start measuring things in Bitcoin, this is what I foresee happening. We talk about the price of Bitcoin right now. It's $70,000. Completely irrelevant. And so there's going to come a day where Bitcoin's going to be worth $100 million and one sat is going to equal $1. This is going to happen much faster than people think. But with that, that's kind of where we're already living. I'm living in that mindset. So I'm doing everything that I can to, stay afloat, stay solvent, but also get as many sats as I possibly can and find ways to earn sats. And do, whether I have to do things in fiat and then convert it to Bitcoin, I want to get as many sats as possible because I'm not looking at the fact that one sat is worth less than a penny. It's irrelevant because over time, regardless of what you or I do here, we can only accelerate things. The governments are doing a pretty good job with that themselves. But all we can do is that understand that everything is going to fall in comparison to Bitcoin. And as it falls, we're going to get $1 equals 100 sats. Or first milestone is going to be $1 here in Canada equals 1,000. And then $1 equals 100 sats. And then $1 equals $1 or 1 sat. And in that world, if you already put yourself in that mindset, Bitcoin becomes so much more valuable. And it is. That's the thing that we're missing. Everything's just lagging behind. Bitcoin is already that valuable. The network's there, the infrastructure's in place, the technology is there. Everything's already ready to go. We just have to wait for everybody else to show up. And as more and more people understand this and realize the fact that everything's falling in comparison to Bitcoin, that's what's going to happen. So